The show's going to be a little different this season.
We are referring to this as Game of the Game. Well, the game is that there's a hat. In that hat, there are prompts. We do not know what these prompts say.
You and we both don't know what we're going to be talking about next episode. Cookie Pocket, the game of the game.
The game of the game of the game of the game of the game. The game of the game.
Our streak of the only way that Cookie Pocket shoots straight. Wait for it. Is how many episodes in a row Christian will not like.
Oh, you got him. Oh, you got him.
Take that.
Wow.
Take that as a defense.
Cut him off.
I really
You got him.
got cooked. I got sauteed by that one.
Although
I'll be the first to say that this is the best film we've watched in probably 6 or 7 recording sessions. So
6 or 7.
6 or 7.
Oh no!
It was not
6 or 7
intentional.
episodes back, I think, includes Magic, which you gave a 4.
Oh, then no. I think maybe
Zach
I'm
comes
counting.
to Maddox's defense again.
Yeah,
Well, it's the last
I think
movie
I
I
mean
can remember
recording.
that Christian really liked.
That is true.
Yeah, I don't know. Was Magic? Did we record Magic before Brazil?
Yes, because
Yeah,
Brazil is not
okay.
part of
Yeah.
the game of the game. The holiday specials were their own thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think my mistake is probably
It's
I'm
sacred.
counting Remember the Night and forgetting
Sure, yeah.
Magic. But in 5 episodes, let's say. That's probably a safe number.
I will say, though, I will relent that we have been on a bit of a streak, and let's call it an unconventional streak.
A gorilla streak.
And that has happened to a commando streak, and that has happened to coincide with Christian disliking a lot of the movies we've discussed. But I do have to say
Yes.
that this time round, I think you're barking up the wrong tree entirely, Christian. I thought this was a great movie.
Yeah.
Just to get the intro out of the way before we, get into the heart of the discussion. Last time I pulled a prompt penned by who else but Mitchell, which was a 20th century war film that's not about a major war. And so I went to the Imperial War Museum's website, and I looked for a list of
Logically.
20th century armed conflicts. And I went through them, and I was like, okay, well, that's not a major, that's not a minor war. That's not a minor war. And then I kind of separated those out, and then I looked for movies about those conflicts. And the very first one on the list, the Boer War, was the film that I found, was the conflict for which I found a film, which is Breaker Morant, which is an Australian film, which is about a group of Australian men who have been sent to fight in the Boer War in South Africa for the British Empire, and are put on trial for the shooting of Boer prisoners. I really considered making us watch the film The Ploughman's Lunch, which is about the Falklands War, but I decided against it because I felt like the tribunal might get on my case, because that movie is not about the actual Falklands conflict. We're not like in the trenches with the, I know there weren't trenches. We're not like in the muck with the soldiers. We're at home with a radio presenter who's using the war to like manipulate his career. And so I thought best to keep things simple and avoid my being told that I flagrantly disregarded the prompt or whatever. And we'll go with something that is definitely a war film, which was Breaker Morant. I watched this back in high school for Mr. Abrams' AP History class. There was an assignment that he gave where
I remember
we had to. It was like a list
we had
of
options,
movies, and you had to pick a movie.
I remember that one.
And I picked Breaker Morant, and I remember not really thinking much of it at the time, but this time round it clicked for me way more. But before I just sing the film's praises endlessly, what did you guys think of Breaker Morant?
Should I go first?
I think you should go first.
No.
Which
No.
was coming to our rescue.
I have to say something. I think 95% of the class saw World War I or World War II films, and we chose that instead. Zach, nobody knows what a boar is, so nobody was going to choose that film.
I didn't
Anyway,
really
go ahead.
either.
Go
I
ahead.
think that was a consequence of not to jump the gun here, but I will say I think when I first saw this film, that to agree with Christian's Letterboxd review somewhat, my complete lack of knowledge on the Boer War meant that I had no idea what was going on in this movie. I remember going through, and also the way I watched movies in high school was very different. I only had like 15 to 20 minutes of free time at a time in high school. So I think I watched this movie
Oh my god!
like over the course of 2 weeks while I ate my lunch on like the weekends. And
Oh, no.
that definitely had some consequence too. But yeah, I didn't know what a boar was either at the time.
Yeah, I do find Zach's initial reaction reassuring. At least my reaction having some utility or honesty. I initially published my review at 3 stars, but then about 15 seconds later, I was like, am I only giving this 3 stars because I know it's in the Criterion collection and it has a 4.0 average and I feel some obligation? And the answer was yes. I did not have a 3-star experience. So I was like, all right, 2.5. We'll be honest. And maybe my lunch will be eaten because of it. But hey, hopefully it makes for a better episode. I had a very difficult time following who each soldier was, what each of them was accused of, and how it played into the broader conflict of the Boer War. And after watching the film, I did some minimal reading on Wikipedia to sort of better position myself towards understanding the non-fictional story and the fates of each soldier and what they had done. And I kind of understood retrospectively, but I still stand by, I don't think the film does a good job of telling their story in a way that's easily understandable. I will agree with what Zach says about the cinematography not being flashy, but still being very tasteful and different. But I just had a lot of trouble following. There are also a couple flashbacks to before the trial, during the trial, and they're done so directly and without any sort of artifice of indicating to the viewer in a tonal or visual way, hey, by the way, this is a flashback. It's more like we're just cutting to another scene, and that's a bit confusing. The more I talk about this, the more I realize that I'm kind of making myself sound like a simpleton.
I don't know what's going on. Just shut that off. That's not what you sound like.
But I will still say, from the caveated perspective, my favorite phrase on this channel now is caveated perspective. I used it to describe my initial response to the Changeling. Somebody who does not know the war at all, who was put off by the opening text crawl and was not really impressed by any of the actors, though not repulsed by any of them either, just kind of ambivalent. It's a 2.5. And I think maybe if I have Zach's experience of revisiting this in another age where I am older and wiser, perhaps then it'll get a 4.
And less educated about law.
Yes.
And being inherently biased that way. Well, I'm inherently biased about the Boer War. I have some understanding of it already, which definitely helps, but I feel like almost like a second watch. I do think you would enjoy this a second time if you saw it another time, Christian, because there is a lot of nuance and implicit, I guess, implicit background or like implicit understanding of the way that the legal system is like not working at all. And I feel like honestly, I mean, this was gonna happen. Paths of Glory comparison incoming. Obviously, there are a lot of parallels to Paths of Glory. The biggest difference really being that the accused followed orders this time instead of not following them. And Paths of Glory arguably is much more clear cut there's obviously a moral strength to not following the orders, and everyone trying to take them down through these imperialist, like, royal tendencies and imperial tendencies when it comes to like executing what would, like, on paper be like pretty clear cut, you know pretty obvious, democratic processes and assumption of innocence and everything. And in reality, it just doesn't turn out that way. In this, I feel like it was a lot more interesting that there's a persecuted minority, and there's the persecuted minority killing the persecuted minority, and the British Empire is like the looming Leviathan that's controlling the whole thing and making it a lot more complicated, especially because no one in this is like acting like morally reprehensible or to the point where it's like this is like the worst decision that could have ever been made, because realistically, and in a lot of cases, there is some argument to be made that humanely shooting someone instead of taking them with you and having them suffer is actually a better like decision. I'm not saying that it was a better decision, but I am saying like putting yourself in that situation, and not to mention the orders, obviously, essentially forcing your hand into doing it. It just adds a lot of complexity to the story that there really didn't need to be that much. But in my opinion, a lot of it is really implied, and it's really how much you I guess want to pick up on. And if you don't necessarily hone in on that, and you hone in on more of like the preceding aspects, or you hone in more on just the fact that they're like, this is like a sham court, and you just kind of get hung up on that fact in the beginning and don't know what's going on, then like I'm basically talking about Christian's opinion, but I think like there's it can be seen that way. I did not watch the film thinking that at all. I was not honing in on that. I was intrigued about the historical context. I was intrigued about the just the like the power back and forth, essentially, and like everyone kind of has a hand in the pie, but ultimately like the politics of it are going to take over no matter what, and that inevitability leads to a lot of drama and conflict. And I think the performances were great. I will 100% agree with Christian, especially in like the first 2/3. It's very hard to like keep track of everybody's names. I do appreciate they say their names somewhat often, but they're alternating between last names and first names and lieutenant and major, and that gets really confusing. But towards the end, I had a fairly good idea of what was going on. But other than that, I mean, it was filmed really beautifully. The flashback pacing is one of my favorite aspects of the film in general. It makes the courtroom scenes all the more engaging, and yeah, I just thought it was really great. I think there's a lot more I would pick up on if I watched it again.
Yeah, and I hate to structure this episode as if we're just like ritualistically taking pot shots at Christian, but in my experience on the second viewing,
it's my turn.
I felt that this kind of makes like textbook perfect use of the courtroom structure, where we're introduced to our main characters, we're introduced to their lawyer, and then the court scenes are essentially, okay, let's learn about the details of how this happened. Here's this person who's going to give us some detail, and we're going to see a flashback so we understand the context of what has just been said, and then they're going to leave, and then this other person is going to come in. And it's the use of the courtroom as sort of an expositional construct, which is, basics. It's sort of the basics of a courtroom drama. This was originally a play that was adapted to the screen, which I think you kind of get that feel, but Bruce Beresford makes very good use, I think, of interesting angles that also make it not feel stagey. And I also just think they don't shy away from kind of the thorny moral aspects of the case, because it would be easy to portray these three guys who were being court-martialed as, oh, well, the poor Australian boys who are being scapegoated by the Empire, and they clearly think that they're that. But the film also shows us them doing pretty awful things. I mean, they show Morant, Edward Woodward's character, who Edward Woodward, sidebar, is one of those actors who I feel like should have been on the show already. He's one of those actors who, to me, feels like he would have been in one of like the British B dramas that I like brought on the show in season 1, but I don't think he's ever been on the program. I think he's very good in this. Probably his best known role is he's in The Wicker Man, the original Wicker Man, as Sergeant Howie. Um, but they show, there's a scene where they find a Dutch settler, a Boer, who's wearing this khaki jacket from a British officer that's just been brutally mutilated. They saw his body, and he gets very unprofessional with him. He's throwing him to the ground, he's yelling at him, he's threatening him at gunpoint, and I think we're meant to understand his reaction, but we're also meant to be alarmed by it and think, okay, this is not the thing that should be done. He's going over the line here. And I don't necessarily think at the end we're left with a a rosy idea of, oh, these guys were sacrificed, they were sent up the river for no reason at all, and they were completely blameless. I do think there's some indication that this is a more complicated issue than that. I mean, especially since their defense kind of hinges on, we were following orders, which, in the 20th century is a familiar excuse. I think it's known legally at this point as the Nuremberg defense. So I think this is very much batting that around and saying, what do you think, audience? What is your feeling on this? And I think that's an important aspect of it too. I also did some reading on the history, and I think, really interestingly, there weren't just 3 guys on trial in the actual history. I think there were 3 more as well in this same sort of batch that was on trial at the same time. And the other 3 had kind of different crimes that I think would have been interesting to explore here, but I do understand why they left them out. I think it would have muddled the pot a little bit too much. Because one of them was on trial for a mercy killing. He had not been part of like a firing squad, but a Boer prisoner who had been shot, was not quite dead, and he went up and shot him in the head to finish him off and put him out of his misery. And he was on trial for that. And then there was another man, I think, who was on trial for something to do with concealing information about British soldiers or Australian soldiers who had been executed for refusing to shoot Boer prisoners. And that, I think, could have been a really interesting counterpoint to introduce to the pot here. Definitely. It's something something to do with information about refusing to shoot Boer prisoners. I understand why they didn't include those here, because this is a 100-minute movie, and you do need some kind of direction. I think if they had, we would be saying we were even more confused. And, high school me would have been completely hopeless to write my essay for Mr. Abrams' class. But I perhaps a mini-series adaptation of Breaker Morant someday could tackle those. But yeah, I really loved it. 4 out of 5. I am no great connoisseur of the Australian New Wave, but I've seen a few of kind of the biggest movies of that movement, and I do think this deserves its status amongst the tip top of that crowd. We're all gonna nod in silence right now.
My favorite, one of my favorite shots is when they actually get shot, and the Australians are looking over and looking at them, because there's an awful lot of nuance in that. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it just knowing like that the Australians were literally forced into this whole conflict for the most part. Mm-hmm. And being a part of the empire, you're conscripted, you're treated like another British soldier until you're used as a scapegoat. and I did read one thing. All 3 of us read. All 3 of us
we did the assigned reading.
We did the assigned reading, and I'm not ready for Stackhouse slip of paper quiz. I can tell you what. But what I will tell you is that that was definitely pressed too much, is what I read, and that the scapegoat thing was a too big emphasized tone, I guess, or part of the messaging. And I didn't really get that too much. I mean, I know it was brought up a little bit, but it wasn't really like, bringing it back to Paths of Glory. I mean, there was a lot of very explicit melodrama with that. And there was a lot of like theatrical declarations going on in that film from all sides. But in this, it was more like just frustrated contention and nothing that really stood out as being like radically unbelievable. Just some liberties were taken, but like the general story is basically the same. And also like the whole idea of concentration camps, that irony as well, because that term was invented during this war, even though obviously weren't extermination camps, but they were, work camps with very bad conditions. And I don't like the just following orders being used so much. I mean, there's like 8 million different ways you could say that, or at least write that better. I mean, at least for the audience, and maybe it's just like, repetitive, so it's more uncomfortable and convincingly uncomfortable that they keep saying it. But like, I feel like there could have been a little bit more nuance with that line being used. Like, whoa, I'm just following orders, and they walk away, and it's like, wow, I feel really, yeah, that's horrible. A 1980 movie saying that is like, it's just a little bit cheesy, but for the most part, I didn't feel like this was that cheesy at all. And none of the performances really stuck out to me as like super impressive. I mean, Major Thomas, the defense, he was pretty convincing, and I liked, once again, he wasn't really melodramatic. He was very he tried to be very level-headed. He tried to, expand through as much of the law as he could, knowing that it was an absolute crapshoot. And I just thought that was pretty entertaining.
He definitely has the biggest moments. He's got the moments that, and this was, I feel like we're discussing The Changeling again, because I remember when we talked about The Changeling in season 1, something I brought up was how it won like 10 Canadian Academy Awards, the Genie Awards. And this similarly won like 10 Australian Academy Awards. And, he was nominated for, I think, Best Lead Performer. And there's so many moments in this that you can see at the awards ceremony, them playing on the big screen as the crowd claps before and the award goes to at the end of the montage.
Wow. Imagine.
Yeah, I thought he brought an appropriate passion to his circumstances. Especially, we're given this background that he primarily works with wills, and this is his first, the character's first ever tribunal or in court defense, which is a pretty extraordinary disadvantage. And he also is only given a 1-day notice of the trial, so he has much less time, totally inadequate time to prepare for something. If he had one client, let alone all 3 of these men. I think I was a bit put off by when he gets, and I'm realizing now that maybe a lot of my issues stemmed from having law brain on more than cinema brain. But I was initially put off because I thought when he gets impassioned with the panel of judges that he's not doing himself any favors when he does that. He's never like totally out of line, like Mitchell said, but there are definitely, you get the sense very early on that he, along with his defendants, knows that this is like stacked a deck against him, and instead of endearing himself to the judges, which is, I think, what you should do if you're trying to win, he kind of accepts that it's an uphill battle. I was also sort of frustrated by not knowing the rules of the procedure, not knowing how a tribunal, how a British court-martial works. I'm not totally unmoored because at least British common law was like the starting point for much of the nationwide law that we recognize in the States today. But then I also was confused or disarmed by when the defendants are compelled to testify, because, of course, in criminal trials in the States, we have a constitutional right against self-incrimination, i.e., a criminal defendant can't be forced to testify at their own trial. So all this is like all of a bunch of little things that maybe set my brain back like 5 seconds, that are relatively inconsequential and don't speak to the quality of the film, but probably added to my confusion and disorganization.
I did find myself wondering throughout, I wonder what Christian is going to think of the legal stuff in this. And, you know, I am not a student of the law. I am not a lawyer. I have never even been a member of a jury. I was called for jury duty once, and that meant that my county kept me home from work for a week and never called me in once, because that's how it works in our part of Maryland. So a little bit of bitterness there. But I think for me, a court movie is often the only time I'm going to get hung up on something like procedure is if something is glaringly incorrect. Glaringly, that is not how a court works. And I think in this movie, at least, the trial kind of holds together by the internal logic of that the film sets for itself. And I do get the impression that this is based pretty directly on the records of the actual case. I mean, they make a point of showing stenographer. I guess it wouldn't be a stenographer at the time. The scribe taking notes as the case goes throughout, and it feels pretty close to reality to me. Especially my perception, especially of like a military procedure as well, is okay. Well, this is, you know, they're in the middle of the war. They're in the middle of the brush. They're way out here in the back of beyond. So they're kind of making do, and if somebody has an outburst or somebody does something that technically isn't quite to the letter of how these things should normally be done, we got to get the case done with. We're not going to say that this is null and void, because it'll take 6 months to get a new group of people out here to try this thing, and we already sent half these people to India anyway. So for me, it held together by some kind of internal logic, at least. Kind of reminded me of The Rainmaker a bit. The Rainmaker came out
Seen it.
A decade, 15 years later. I don't think the book was even out yet at this point, but that's also a film that's about, you know, this inexperienced lawyer who's only ever done like wills and paperwork and things like that, who gets called up to their first criminal case, and it's this enormous thing that they have to figure out how to do more or less on the fly. It has a similar structure, but these are, of course, the well-worn beats of the court movie.
I thought that the flashbacks to armed conflict were very well photographed. And I guess the one that was not necessarily a flashback, but when the three guys are called to defend the Boer attack, even though they know or suspect their eventual fates. And I thought that was photographed really well and didn't feel gratuitous, but like the flashbacks and other things, was edited and pieced together to prevent the trial from getting too boring.
Yeah, and that's a little I will say the film, I think, hits a little too heavily. A moment, Mitchell, a moment. You'll have your time. Hits a little too heavily on the button, I think, of their lawyer trying to find, you know, these loopholes to get them out of this case. And that's one such instance where he says, oh, well, these men have demonstrated these extreme acts of bravery. According to this thing that the Duke of Wellington once said that I have in my book here, they should be pardoned. And that to me is a little like, all right, we're scraping at the bottom of the barrel. Of course, that's the impression we're meant to get. But I do think that very well photographed scene. And also we get this real impression from that, you know, these are stalwart military men who, you know, this, I think a different brand of character, what we might expect from these men is, you have me in a cell. I am not leaving this cell. I'm going to close the door and not going to help you guys at all with this defense because, you know, screw you. But when they're called, they do what they are demanded to do, and they defend the fort. And I think you see a real side of their characters there. You see sort of their honor and their dedication from all three of them, not just from oh goodness, the youngest one. I've forgotten his name. But throughout, we get this idea.
He believes in the British Empire.
He believes in the British Empire. He believes in, the sanctity of the British Empire, that they're there to do the right thing. Hancock is the...
Wilton?
Wilton is the younger one who believes in the British Empire.
Okay.
Hancock is the drunk who likes to sleep around with women and has a mustache.
Okay.
And Edward Woodward is Morant, who is the only one of the three who is English. He's like a gentleman and a career military man. And so you have these different representations from the group of these people in this situation. But all three of them have that honor to step up when it's demanded of them, even though they are on trial. So I think that is a valuable scene. Mitchell. Popcorn.
Ow. Yummy popcorn. Thank you. Put some Old Bay in it. What I would say, I will say that it was very impactful to have two of them shot and the third one in prison, which I think is accurate to real life with those specific people. Because it's like, oh, well, they show a little bit of mercy. We have to kill them, but at least we spared this one because we're not like barbarians or anything. And I thought that was a pretty, subtle irony there. I was going to say with the legal aspect of it, I do think there's definitely a lot of scrutiny in some areas and almost no scrutiny at all in other areas, specifically in the Uniform Code of Military Justice today in the U.S. And a lot of, at least I don't know about Imperial British law either or anything, especially at this time, but the Hague Conventions were derived from Lieber's Code, I think it was, which was he was a German scholar that immigrated to the U.S. after the Napoleonic Wars, and his sons fought on both sides. I don't know. You guys ever heard this story before?
I have not.
Nope.
His sons fought on both sides of the American Civil War, and he essentially wrote like the original, I guess not like the rules of engagement, but like the rules when it comes to like prisoners of war. I guess it is like rules of engagement for Lincoln, and Lincoln signed them. And so that was the reference for the Hague Conventions in the 1900s, because that was the most recent relevant, in a lot of ways to the American Civil War, is like a reference for the rest of the world at the time, with all the different powers involved, economically and militarily in it. But yeah, I think then Britain signed that, so they were a part of that, and part of that was not being able to kill prisoners of war, not killing anyone that's surrendering. We didn't mention Hess. I think his name's Hess, the German
the
minister. Yeah, the missionary. And you can't kill people even if they're aiding and abetting or whatever. With the enemy, you still can't kill them. Like all that stuff. I'm pretty sure that they would be following the international law, within their imperial law. But at least my impression was the isolation part, and also the royal kind of top down imperial, like you have to follow the law until the king says don't, and then it just doesn't happen. I feel like that is a extremely likely case in this case. And I feel like that's what made it very, I guess, believable for me. But also, I talking about the Australian pride thing, and like, they go in their background, they have like dreams and stuff. You get a very good sense of the men, and that they have completely different backgrounds and interests, but they are united in the cause, but not for the crown. So it's like a really weird dynamic that I feel like this specific war has that most don't, where it's like usually it's kind of one and the same, like culture and pride and honor are kind of wrapped into one thing for Australians specifically, and in World War II to an extent too, World War I and World War II. you know, they are not, you know, they're kind of the battered underdogs. And I'm already forgetting the other Australian film we watched, but similar.
Gallipoli.
Gallipoli, yeah.
Thank you, Gallipoli. Gallipoli was another big, you know, Australian pride thing. So we're getting them all in. Yeah. We're getting them all in. we're learning all about it. Learning all about it. But yeah, I really like the way this was filmed. I feel like with courtroom stuff, I feel like if Christian watched Hearts War, it would be over.
Oh,
I feel like we would just lose, to be honest with you. We as in I would lose because that argument I just made would not hold up. What's they took a lot of liberties in that one.
What's that Star Wars line that oh shoot, in A New Hope, last we met, you were the master and I were the student, or when Obi-Wan and Darth Vader fight.
Yes,
I'm picturing that if Hearts War
last
came
time
back.
we met, I was but the learner.
Yes.
Now I am the master.
Yeah.
There we go.
Christian obliterating Hearts War on a rewatch 7 years later.
Yeah.
No!
Oh boy.
Maybe this.
And also, I was sorry. I'm sorry.
No.
I'm getting my time back. The combat sequences were like, I commented on the pacing already, but I liked how fairly realistic they were. One thing that's hard to pinpoint is the actual Boers' role and everything, because I did mention obviously they're a persecuted minority, and that's kind of a big deal, you know, in the Boer War, and that basically defines like South African culture and apartheid and everything later. But like, I do wonder, like in retrospect, if Australians or historians even in Australia specifically are like have any commentary about that, or like maybe they were kind of, you know, underlooked in that regard, because they don't really get, like, you know, they get their moments, but they're treated like garbage, you know, and maybe, I mean, that's accurate depiction. I'm not saying they should be, you know, something good should happen to them if nothing good happened to them, but at the same time, it's just interesting that they're basically kind of the butt of the punchline throughout the whole time. And the story was really more about the Australians, even though they're, you know, regardless, the Boers are dying one way or another. So
yeah, I think it's interesting you point that out, Mitchell. I wanted to comment. I think the conclusion, the firing squad, ends this on such a powerful final note. I think it's gorgeously photographed. We also get this, you know, burst of personality from Morant, who's been so buttoned up throughout most of the movie, except for these outbursts he has every now and then, where you get the feeling that his reserve personality just can't take it anymore. And I think the ultimate one of those is shoot straight, you bastards, don't make a mess of it, right before they blow him away. And then ending on that final humiliation of the shot. Hancock is too tall for his coffin, and they have to just kind of cram him in there unceremoniously, I think is a great way to close the film. Christian, before you arrive to this recording, or as you are arriving, I should say, and dealing with your audio, I brought up to Mitchell how watching this and seeing your review, I felt this discussion was going to be quite similar to the discussion we had on Devil's on the Doorstep. Because if I recall, that was another movie that Mitchell and I liked quite a bit, and you were a little more lukewarm on. And I think they're kind of similar movies in that they're about these big conflicts between these larger empire-sized forces. But the movie itself is more focused on the actual people who are just kind of stuck in the middle of it. This large conflict where Britain is trying to expand its empire into South Africa. What is the actual personal impact of that on the Dutch people there in the middle of this, you know, empty veldt? The Australians who are sent there to fight them without necessarily understanding why Britain even wants this section of South Africa. I think the movie also does a good job of, without really even putting a point on it, addressing the impact of the indigenous population of South Africa. Because the only time we ever see black people in this whole movie is, oh, well, they're serving the drinks. Oh, they're taking the notes. You know,
that too.
this conflict between white peoples has been pasted on top of a people who have already been kind of like ground into the ground. And now the persecuted minority is the Dutch, who were not even here in the first place. And I think it does a lot of that without necessarily saying it. And I think it's interesting that Devil's on the Doorstep, I think, was doing a similar thing, and we had kind of a similar dynamic in that episode.
Yeah, a lot of interesting stuff there. I think you guys kind of talked me into Devil's on the Doorstep by the end of that episode. I don't know if I'm as much there with this one. It feels, for one thing, it feels far too simple and easy to say, oh, the movie barely depicts black people, which is its way of explaining how decimated that population or mistreated that population was. I think there's probably a better way to spell that out than just to barely include them in the film. I think that's true, though, that I tend to be preoccupied with the broader conflict, and it either clouds or prevents my ability to sympathize with these guys. But then at the same time, I don't know that Gallipoli belabors the function of that war in great detail. And I love Gallipoli. I do think that on some level, this film is making the choice not to delve too deeply into the plight of the Boers or the broader South African population. The Boers are just the faceless enemy, basically, in this. And I think the film does that because were they to spell that out more, it would even further dissociate or discourage an audience from sympathizing with the men on trial, which we've already established that they're morally gray and that we're not meant to sort of, it's not as cut and dry as A Few Good Men or some other example where the defendant is obviously innocent. But I still think especially with what you said about the coffin bit and the execution being a devastating moment, the film is still very much taking the side that this was the wrong thing and these defendants were victims. And for better or for worse, the broader Boer conflict is sort of a backdrop to that by necessity. And maybe I'm too curious or too sensitive to that being tabled to tell an equally valid story of these three men. But it's hard for me to just compartmentalize those two things or evaluate this film as though the Boer War is not an issue whatsoever.
I feel to say that not focusing on the Boer conflict is a way of avoiding incriminating our three leads. It almost gives them, I think, more responsibility for the actions of the war than they have. Because I think to focus more on because these three guys are three guys who don't really want to be there, who are forced to fight by the broader British Empire. I think to focus more on the Boer conflict would more cast as a villain the British forces that we already have cast as a villain, because they're the ones kind of putting our leads up against the wall. I'm not that I'm saying I don't think that the film is necessarily trying to we can't let them know about the conflict because then we won't like the characters. I don't necessarily think they're trying to do that. I think it's not necessarily. I think it's one of those things where the games of empire matter little to the chess pieces that are being moved around on the board. To them, it's just a matter of, oh, my friend was brutally mutilated, and I knew a guy who got shot in the face yesterday, and I have to get up today and ride around and look for people to do exactly the same thing. And I think the point that's trying to be made is that this broader conflict between the British and the Dutch is just this pie in the sky compared to the people who are actually on the ground in the mud doing the fighting.
Yeah. I do think that not depicting, although they are in it, is almost like an acknowledgement. This came out during apartheid. So I feel like that was a very intentional.
That's an interesting wrinkle
decision.
too, yeah.
Like, this is like Nelson Mandela. You know what I'm saying? Like this literally just happened.
Because he was still in prison
shortly
at that
after.
point, right?
Because he got released in the going into the 90s, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I feel like that was an intentional, like, all right, we have to acknowledge there are Black people here, but this is not that kind of story.
Sure. It's almost a silent acknowledgement. Maybe that's me reading the context of the time as content in the film. I do think it's something notable. It reminds you of something, at least.
I'll do you one better, Zach. Any Revolutionary War film ever that does not depict the frontier is basically doing the same thing. So I mean, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of Native Americans here. That's a. But Mel Gibson. Hold everybody's standing.
He is the patriot.
Mel Gibson. That's right. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. There's always going to be like a what about? Well, what about the other people? But my whole point is that it's just interesting that this is a film of pride for Australians, but within like the broader political context, there's like a lot of nuance to it, and to this specific region and everything has a lot of layers of like sociological like upheaval going on at different points in history. So yeah, it's very interesting.
Well said.
I'm glad. This is reminding me of so many other war films that I think would be. When are we going to watch Zulu? What kind of a mousetrap would that be to walk into?
What's Zulu?
Oh my goodness! Well, this is my British Empire perspective. Zulu is a film with Michael Caine about the Zulu Wars in Africa, and it's from the perspective. It's from the perspective of these British soldiers at a fort who are being attacked by the Zulu tribes. And the whole film is basically just like it's like Assault on Precinct 13, but with Zulu warriors.
I remember younger Michael Caine in that. Yeah, Master Wayne, there's too many arrows coming in. Oh no. Good times. Well,
do we have any final words on? I feel like we're breaking up.
Is the war over?
Breaker Morant.
The war breaker. How do we feel about the title? That's my last question. What naming it Breaker Morant? And I understand he's called Breaker because of the horse breaking in horses, but
I do wonder if he's kind of like a cult figure in Australia, and the idea was like, it would be like if you called a movie like George Washington or something.
That's exactly what I was thinking. No way.
The idea of like, people know that name. We need to, that'll be a point of interest versus if you called it the court martial. Because I was thinking about that during the movie. It's not really entirely about him. I mean, he's a big character, but I would not call him like the crux of the whole narrative. It's really about the three of them together. So yeah, it is kind of a curious title, but I think the title, the play was originally called that as well. So
yeah, well, that's the reason why.
Yeah, well, but then you can speculate. Well, why did they call the play that? Because it's about the same thing. Yeah, maybe it's a bigger character in the play. Recognizable historical name is my bet.
Yeah,
it does have quite a nice ring to it. I think. Having absolutely no knowledge of who Morant is, it kind of sounds like a very theatrical name.
Break a Morant.
I'm also glancing at the cast list and characters list because of the question, and I noticed that Jack Thompson, who plays Major Thomas, plays Klieg Lars in Attack of the Clones.
He does!
Which is crazy.
Oh, man. I hadn't thought of that, but he does. Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
On a very similar set to this movie.
Yeah, he shows up for like 2 minutes and he's like, "Shmi's me wife. I bought her from Watto," which is totally not problematic at all.
in his little terracotta house.
Yeah.
They might as well have shot it in the courtroom from this movie.
if you're interested in kangaroo courts, this is the kind of film for you.
We're losing all the
That was pretty
Australian
clever.
goodwill we built up in the preceding discussion.
But it's a kangaroo court, and because
Yeah,
yeah.
I love you, Steve Irwin. I love you so much.
The Australians
I
are
love
tuning
you,
out in mock.
Crocodile Dundee. Crocodile Dundee, come back.
Yeah, what else can we can we throw in here?
I'm running out of Australia.
Me
I
too.
went to
Prime
Sydney
Minister.
once. Yeah, I went to Sydney once, and it was a really nice city. So,
Oh, really?
Oh,
What was the context at which you were in Sydney?
402.
my dad had a
Wallaby
work
Way.
trip, and we all went, and we saw the koalas, and
Oh,
their McDonald's is
I
better than
remember.
ours, and everyone's very nice.
did you go to the Opera
I'll
House?
be the judge of that.
No, unfortunately, I was a bit young and uncultured at this point.
Yeah, you didn't
Yeah.
want to see Madame Butterfly in Sydney, Australia.
Not quite yet, no.
Well, that's not staying in.
I hope that my tepid reaction to Breaker Morant has made the episode better. I think it probably
Yes.
Yeah,
has.
I think so.
Yes.
Certainly something for
Yeah.
us to discuss. I think an episode where we're all like, "This was really bad. Let's laugh at how bad it was." That's an entertaining episode. An episode where we're all like, "This was really great. Let's talk about how great it is." That's a less interesting episode. I think it's always more fun when at least one of us is a little less keen on it than the rest of us.
Let's challenge that.
Yes. We'll bring
Oppenheimer was
the
great.
best movie that you've ever
Yeah,
seen to next episode.
I kind of want to, man. I'm ready for just like a certified banger. No.
Yeah, I know.
Well, it is
No
your
hang-ups,
turn to
no
full
nothing.
prompt this
Anymore.
episode, so you've got a lot to live
Oh
up to.
god. Oh god.
Yep.
Oh man.
It's your time not to blow it, Christian.
Your
You're on a
last
streak.
poll
Don't
was
ruin
Tower of London, so you've got a lot to live up to.
yourself.
Oh no.
Well, is it time we get to week in review?
I think so.
Oh, what a week. What a week.
I'm talking about another book on Week in Review. I'm on a weird streak of talking
Wow.
about books, but I keep finishing a book right before I get home to record these. And it's a more of a lackluster one than I talked about last time, because last time I talked about Stephen King's Joyland, which was a book I liked quite a bit. This time I am talking about a book that I will bet nobody who listens to this, all 5 of them, will have read. It's a book called The Shoemaker, which is by Flora Rita Schreiber. Now, for some context as to why I own this book. If you are a Maryland or Baltimore native, you might be familiar with a thing called the Book Thing. If you're not, allow me to elucidate. The Book Thing is a Baltimore nonprofit bookstore, essentially, that takes charity books, neglected books, forgotten books. It collects them from far and wide, and about 4 times a year, they open their doors and they say, "Come on in and take as many books as you want for absolutely free. You can come into the store for an hour with a bag, a box, and you can take as much as you can carry, but you have to leave after the hour, and you can get back in line if you want, but it's a pretty popular thing, so if you want to go in like 2 or 3 times, you're going to be there all day." Gloria and I went to the Book Thing this past summer, and I got something like 40 books. I was a shelf machine. I wasn't even looking at covers. I was just like I was on supermarket sweep. I was taking books off the shelf without even looking. And then I got home, and in the post Book Thing haze, I went, "Oh, what did I even get at the bookstore last night?" And I looked down in my hand and I saw The Shoemaker by Flora Rita Schreiber. This claims to be a nonfiction book about a man named Joe Callinger, who is a fairly forgotten American serial killer from the 1970s. He was very abused as a child, had a lot of psychological issues. He inherited his father's shoe store and like shoe repair shop, and he killed 3 people and tortured some families. Unpleasant stuff, but hardly like a major historical figure in the annals of murder and crime. There's a reason people aren't still talking about the Shoemaker, and they are talking about the Son of Sam and Charles Manson and figures like this. And the book, I was ready to be, okay, I'm going to learn about this man I've never heard of. I'm going to learn his backstory. I'm going to learn about his crimes, because the woman who wrote it was a psychologist and had pretty close communications with Joseph himself while he was in prison. So it's sort of the story of the killer from the killer's lips is how it's pitched. In reality, it's pretty tasteless and dull. What you kind of learn in the 400 pages of this book is that Joseph Callinger is kind of a boring guy. He's kind of a boring, unremarkable guy who had an awful childhood, granted, and then did some awful things as an adult to his family and to other people's families. And the really kind of unpleasant thing about the book is that the author seems to be very much playing the poor little murderer violin. Oh, poor Joe. You know, he did kill these 3 people, 2 of whom were children, 1 of whom was his own. But you know, he was mentally ill, and nobody ever diagnosed him, and it wasn't his fault because he went into a fugue state. And you know, these things may be true. Perhaps he can't be tried as a sane individual and can't be held responsible for his actions. But I don't think that means we need to spend the last half of this book talking about him in prison and how sorry he is, and reading his poems, which have a whole appendix in this book. And Flora Schreiber comes across as like a real like armchair Freud in this. She was chair or assistant of the psychological department at some college for a period of time, which she is very keen to remind you throughout the book. But it just comes across as very exploitative and trashy and unpleasant. And she also wrote a book before this called Sybil, which was about a girl with 16 multiple personalities. She's so messed up and abused, she got 16 multiple personalities. You need to buy this book at the train station. And so she kind of has a track record of putting out these kind of trashy pulp National Enquirer type books, and it left a bad taste in my mouth. I think there's a reason people don't remember it. I would not recommend that you check it out, even if you're somebody who's like really into true crime. I don't think this will even scratch that itch. And I will be putting it in my little free library probably next time I drive to work. So that's my review of The Shoemaker.
You definitely shouldn't read it. But I'm going to give it to someone else to read.
Hey, if it strikes their fancy, they can learn the same lesson I did. They can go, oh, I've never heard of this man. Well, I'll pass it on to the next house.
that is going directly into the rained out, rotted, free book thing outside. 100%.
I probably have asked this before, but Zach, are you on Goodreads by any chance?
I am, yes.
Oh.
I have a Goodreads under City Mist Productions. And my reviews are pretty infrequent and brief, but you can see what I'm reading if you want to. I am on Goodreads.
Okay,
I'm also on Goodreads.
What?
I'm on Goodreads, but I don't know how to read, so I don't know how to get to my account. So,
Mitchell, I gave you a book for Christmas. I didn't know.
Zach, I love the pictures. Okay, I love the pictures. The pictures are so cool. Thank you so much.
We were in AP English together senior year of high school.
Can you imagine how Wicked City came across to me? I suppose the words didn't add that much value. Surely.
Well, I feel like we should just call it there.
All right. Christian, what's your next prompt?
Mitchell, did you do anything this week besides not read?
I didn't do a whole lot. Honestly, like seriously, this was one of the hardest weekend review things to decide on. If I'm really thinking about it, I'm thinking of like 9 diabolical things and 1 like actual thing. And I don't think I ever reviewed this. If I did, then it's a post review of when it came out. Lady Gaga's Mayhem album. Have I ever reviewed that?
Is that the most recent one?
Well, there's an additional song to it since I probably talked about it.
I think we talked about
that's a
this
different
over
album now.
text, but you never actually talked about it on the podcast.
I think
I was
you
probably
might
so
have
defensive.
talked about it on the podcast. I'm
All right,
having
well-
like a ghost of a memory, but I could certainly be wrong.
Well,
Do
the
it
ghost
again.
is coming back. The
Yeah.
ghost of Gaga past, of Little Monsters past, has returned to review now. And I have the album in vinyl. I'd go get up, but I'm too lazy. I have it in vinyl.
And I can't hear anyway.
Yeah, I can't hear anything either. I just learned how to speak just for this episode. but I like it. Obviously the aura wears off. The aura wears off, right? I do think with a lot of these artists now that clearly have a great, coming from an expert, obviously, great vocal range. And I think it really like The Weeknd is a good comparison just because I listen to him a lot because of my fiance. But when you have that much range and you know how to utilize it correctly within your, I guess, like most passionate genres, and you have a really good producer, that like makes a world of difference to me. And I think with Lady Gaga, it did not feel like, oh, it's like a callback to how it was. Like the artists always have that phase where it's like, oh, we're back to the roots. It's just like the first album, that kind of thing. And I don't feel like that at all. I feel like she's very controlled. She doesn't really overdo it too much. I will say the worst part is that there's a lot of Michael Jackson influence. I'll specifically mention the music video for Dead Dance, which was directed by Tim Burton, by the way, is very reminiscent of Michael Jackson. And there's a lot of riffs that come across that are very similar. Which The Weeknd, right? It's same. I'm used to it at this point. But at the same time, like a lot of the things that she sings about, obviously not just like normal Taylor Swift type of relationship drama, but like, being interested in really quirky things and, looking at being interested in someone in a very unorthodox, quirky way, and not like quirky, like, ooh, quirky, like that's really weird. Like he's a zombie and I want you to eat me. Like that's one of the songs.
Oh my goodness.
Is Zombie Boy. But it has like a cheerleading chant to it, like that one Marilyn Manson song. And I just I really like the general style of it, the disco thread throughout, and some of the more mellow songs she tends to really belt in them. But for the most part, like I said, I mean, she's pretty restrained. And obviously Disease and Abracadabra are like the two big, singles coming out of it. And both are pretty great. Disease was obviously a lot lower budget, but Abracadabra was very well choreographed. Maybe that's what I talked about, was the music video for that. I don't remember. Yeah. I think that's what it was. But combining the whole album, I think it's pretty good. I think it's a lot better and definitely a lot different than most artists coming out now. And I think part of that is just her early 2000s influence and kind of keeping those similar, relationship themes and slightly feminist themes throughout are still pretty relevant. And she still keeps that same poppy style in it, and while still being pretty dark and almost gothic overall. So yeah, I didn't rate it, but I just thought it was pretty good.
When did that record come out? Last year.
Early summer last year.
They just stopped playing Abracadabra on the radio. Because I'm the guy who still listens to FM radio to and from work. They just stopped playing that, so it's had some staying power. Gaga still gets on the radio.
Yeah.
I've not heard that song. I can't believe I'm
Really?
confessing this, but I'm just like so
Wow.
unplugged from radio
Mhm.
and Billboard these days. But I should give it a try. She's very talented.
So the director of, fun fact, completely irrelevant. The director of, I think it's Paparazzi, is Jonas Åkerlund, who is also the director of multiple Rammstein music videos
There it is.
and Rihanna as well. I think there's a
It
Rihanna
all
one.
makes
He does a
sense.
lot, but or did a lot, but yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned having a good producer because I feel like that's like the most important thing in pop music now, honestly. I went through a phase where I was like got so purist about songwriting and was like, I don't care how fancy it sounds or if it's the biggest pop hit of the summer. I just want like pure songwriting, good notes and chord progressions and whatever. But now I've reversed course completely on that, and I think at this point it's really about the sound, and a lot goes into that. It's easy to take that for granted, especially on like a slick pop hit that's kind of in one ear and out the other. But yeah, good
I
stuff.
will say, I probably mentioned this too, Abracadabra, a lot of influence from Madonna. And there's a lot of those like those fashion beats that Madonna always had, where there's one where it's like a oh, like like the runway kind of sound. I think that's what I was thinking,
The
runway.
Vogue thing.
Yeah, and that just goes into what Christian's saying. I mean, there's like really little motifs that you feel like there's a lot of passion that went into it. It doesn't feel like it's just kind of a constrained beat the whole time, or it's like the same bop with different sounds or vocals or whatever. It feels there's a lot of variety to it, and a lot of nuance.
Yeah, everybody wants to be Madonna now. There's so much. I think so many big female artists right now are taking a lot of influence from Madonna's like first couple albums. I mean, especially somebody like Sabrina Carpenter, not just in terms of her sound, but also her image and the like. How far can I push the envelope in terms of the sexiness and the implied nudity? Who knows? In a couple of years, Sabrina Carpenter might publish her own coffee table book full of sex. Which is a thing Madonna did. Madonna published a coffee table book called Sex that was just full of images of her having sex with male celebrities, including Vanilla Ice.
Wow.
Well, I'll be the first to say that all the Madonna knockoffs are better than Madonna. So.
Oh my Gorn.
Yeah.
Christian is throwing it down.
Those Australian Madonna fans that can read are so aggravated right now. They are fuming. We have started the ultimate Twitter war. The Reddit thread is growing.
If only anybody was still on Twitter.
Yeah, right.
All those bots are going to be so mad.
All those Russian agents.
Well, I don't know how to make this. Is going to be a crazy tone shift.
The Holocaust.
Not quite that bad.
Okay.
But I read a book and saw the movie adaptation of said book, Ordinary People. And this was kind of a special occasion because this is one of, if not my mom's favorite films. And I saw that it was showing at the Cleveland Cinematheque last weekend. So I was kind of like, hey, Mom, do you want to visit for the weekend and we'll see this movie? And happily that worked out and it was a very fun time. And so I made a point of reading the book before that visit and before seeing the movie. And I found it a lot heavier and more challenging, not from like a reading comprehension standpoint, but from an emotional standpoint than I expected. It deals with this family who is mourning the loss of the oldest son, and the youngest son is also recovering from a attempted suicide. And the sort of puffery you'll see on the book cover and a lot of what you'll hear people say about the book is, oh, these characters are just so real and so relatable and so ordinary, but so real and so relatable and true. But I think that's falling a little bit short of the book's. It's faint praise for what the book does, I think, and trying not to spoil it or the film. But Judith Guest, the author, does a really good job of writing how different people mourn and how impossible it is to fully understand someone, even a family member, even your own parent or your own child. And like loving somebody is not the same as knowing what they're thinking all the time or who they are deep down inside. That's powerful stuff. And the movie is also very good. I prefer the book, which I think is bound to happen when you read a book and then watch the movie in the same week. But Robert Redford directed the film, and it won a lot of things at the Oscars, including Best Picture, over Raging Bull, I think.
Yeah.
So not a small deal there. But I don't mind it. I think Redford gets a ton out of his actors. Mary Tyler Moore plays the mother in the film, and she is like just spectacular at depicting this sort of like icy exterior and somebody who like pushes everything really deep down and chooses not to confront what she's feeling. And Donald Sutherland plays the father. And my impression of Donald Sutherland was that he was this kind of larger than life character actor in genre movies. But in this, he has such a warm, natural disposition as a loving father that is just so effective. And Judd Hirsch plays the psychiatrist that the kid, Timothy Hutton, sees. Timothy Hutton, Cookie Pocket alumnus from Beautiful Girls.
Yes.
Nice.
And he won Best Supporting Actor for this, which is freaking absurd because he's the main character of this movie. That's probably like the worst example of category fraud, as they call it in the Oscars. But it was a 4 out of 5 movie and a 4 out of 5 book. And it's really not for the faint of heart. There are a lot of sections where Conrad, the surviving kid, in the book where Judith Guest writes out his inner monologue of anger. And in the movie, I felt like Timothy Hutton sort of embodies the depression a little cartoonishly at times, or a little more physically over the top. When I think in the book, it's less a hyperactive sadness than it is an absence of feeling. But I thought it was the book and the film are both really strong representations of family struggles. The book is a great representation of depression. And yeah, it's kind of weighed on me a lot, if I'm being honest. But I'm also glad that I took the time to engage with it. And it's not a very hard read. I think it's only 250 pages and a slim book, at least the copy that I read. So if you're primed for that sort of material, I would recommend it.
No.
And now it's time to dive into the frying pan.
No jokes about
Or the
about
fire.
ordinary people.
No, the comedy is over.
Yeah.
I am picking a number.
I can't wait until Christian gets the worst prompt and it's from me.
Don't
It'll be so
even.
exciting.
Don't
Choose
even.
a movie that you hate.
A Lucio Fulci picture. My favorite Lucio Fulci picture, Zombie Boy.
Choose a movie that Zach chooses.
Skip a turn.
Skip a turn. Uno card.
That might not be the worst thing at this point. And I still have mulligans, which
It's true.
every time I
All
say it,
right.
it feels like it's not a real thing, but it is.
All right. Christian's gonna use a mulligan. He doesn't want to do it. He's chicken.
Oh my god. I can't do
He's
this anymore.
chicken.
I can't. I
Has
can't.
anyone in this family ever even
Guys.
seen a chicken?
You can read that.
Oh, I don't know who that is.
Would you like to tell the viewers what prompt you pulled, Christian?
A film directed by Neil Breen. Fateful Findings et al.
Yeah.
Basically, really bad movies.
Are you going to go for it?
Okay, I'm serious. Christian, I feel like you could use the mulligan here.
I feel like
you
Regis
could do
filled
it.
in on Who
I
Wants to Be a
endorse
Millionaire.
that. I 100% endorse that. I endorse Phone a Friend. I endorse all of that.
Oh man.
But think of if I may pitch my prompt for a moment. Think
Oh,
of the
God.
potential of discussing a Neil Breen picture. We could be at like sub-Manos levels here. Think of the riffing,
Oh my God.
the unlimited power. You could even prevent
Zach's quoting
films
the
from
Emperor.
being bad.
Oh my god. Zach's literally Palpatine.
Have I ever told you the story of Neil Breen the Wise?
Oh my god.
He
Oh.
manipulated the digital video to prevent death.
Okay, how many
Oh.
episodes do we have left after this?
I
feel like now is an appropriate time. I'll tell you that.
think we have like 5 or 6 episodes left
Oh,
after
God. Okay.
this one.
I think you should pull the trigger, Christian. I'm
And
not
if I
gonna keep
use my
persuading you.
mulligan, I have to choose what we're watching
Right
right now.
Oh,
Okay.
shoot.
Huh. As I stall.
This is the closest we've ever
Time.
come. I feel like the end of the Butter Battle book right now. Will Christian
The
drop the
cookie-
bomb, or will we?
The cookie pocket gods have chosen to put us through these trials just for this moment to occur.
And you know, Zach, if I didn't pull Italian horror, Video Nasty, Roger Corman, what else? I pulled some other craziness from you.
This
I pulled AI and ruined it.
this has
Yeah.
kind of been Christian has kind of been the Charlie Brown of this season.
Yeah.
Every rotation, Mitchell's been like, "Oh, I got an AI movie. Oh, I got a Hong Kong action film. Christian got a rock."
I was say I'm Lucy and Zach is the football.
You know, I don't have an obvious pivot, and I feel like the spirit of the mulligan is to have a plan lined up. So, being that I do not have a plan lined up, and misery is my home, we're going to talk about Neil Breen next episode.
Oh my
Ace.
God. It is written. It is written. It is written.
Well,
Oh,
guys,
man.
if you want to listen to me be torn apart live on audio, even though I'm not going to like the movie either, but it's going to be my fault, make sure you tune into the next episode of Cookie Pocket. This will be a world-ending one.
The game of the game of the game of the game.